Hello, all. Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week I'm joined by Husky Harry, huggable homos who love film, to dish up a little bit of movie news on some weeks. On busier weeks, though, sometimes we double fist it with a double review, which is exactly what we're going to be doing this week as we review both Logan and Get Out. We'll also be revealing our Movie Bears of the Week contest winners. But before we get to all that goodness, let me introduce my co-host for the evening. Jim Poliafco, welcome to the show.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis. Oh, wait. Wah, wah, no Will this week.
What did you do with Will?
He is unfortunately trapped in a Zelda temple somewhere in Hyrule. I don't know. No, actually, he's on a work trip. But in his stead, we have the wonderful, we have the delightful, we have the fantastic Steve from Sacramento Movie Bears. Steve, welcome.
Well, maybe it's Steve, or maybe Will has just gotten really good at cosplay.
Maybe.
Well, Steve, welcome back to the show. It's been a hot minute since we've had you on, but we got to see you back in January for a movie out in your neck of the woods, which was a total blast.
It was great to have you at one of our brand spanking new theaters with the big recliners and cocktail service, and we saw a fair to middling movie, as I recall, but it was
Passengers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, wow. 2 hours of gaslighting.
The recall is amazing with me. I'm on point tonight.
Your memory is sharp like a tack.
I can remember a movie 2 months ago.
That's because it's early enough in the year and we haven't hit South by yet, Jim. So you still have some like bandwidth to work with.
Yeah. It's usually not much, but I was surprised I remembered that.
I would have forgotten what I had seen this week if it weren't for the fact that we're reviewing them both tonight.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Don't tip your hand.
Well, that makes it a little bit easier. Hey, guys, want to give a quick shout out to some listeners who are hanging out with us live right now in the live chat. Hey, Austin, and hello, William. Glad to have you guys hanging out with us. Say hi to the guys, boys.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Austin and William so far. Come on, everybody.
So I see quite a few people have joined us. Don't forget, if you're watching live, you've got that live chat feature. We're going to be hanging out in the chat room with you guys tonight. Feel free to jump in, be part of the conversation. I mentioned we've got 2 movies to review, both Logan and Get Out. But guys, how do you feeling about maybe drooling over some of our super sexy listeners for a couple minutes?
Yes, please.
Bring them on.
We can definitely do that. Another quick shout out to Sam, who's hanging out with us in the chat as well. Hey, Sam, glad to have you with us. Guys, our first Movie Bear of the Week comes to us from a little place called Hagerstown, Maryland. Am I saying that correctly? Anybody that's from that area? I don't know. Right. Does that sound right? Well, even if I butchered it, guys, say hello to the super sexy David.
Ooh, David.
Oh, hello.
How about a shag, baby? I see he's got Austin Powers there behind him.
Yeah, nice. I used to have that Austin standee in my office for like 10 years. And for 10 years, I was saying shagadelic, baby.
Did you sell it to him?
No, I think that's where it went. Now I know where it went.
Oh, goodness. Well, Jim, you mentioned the Austin Powers, but for those who may be listening on digital tape delay a few days in the future, tell us a little bit about what else we're seeing here.
Well, we see a very handsome bear with, again, with the salt and pepper beards. It's like, I think it's like a theme that's going on the last couple weeks. We had a couple last week and starting off with one this week. Let me see. He looks to be like in an office setting. He's got Austin Powers behind him. He's got a nice white dress shirt, open at the collar with a jacket over it. Sharp dressed guy. That's why I think it's a work environment. But I love that look on dudes, and really handsome guy, and hope to get to meet someday.
That would be awesome. Well, David, congratulations on being our first movie bear of the week for this week. Let me go ahead and queue up our second super cutie movie bear of this week. Guys, this gentleman hails from a town, Jim, you and I will be in just a few days. He is from Austin, Texas, and his name is also Austin. Say hello to Austin from Austin, guys.
Is this the Austin King that we're talking to, I wonder?
It sure is.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, now I get to put a face with the name.
I'm trying to think of for people listening, celebrity lookalikes or who might fall in what category. Our previous bear, I was gonna say maybe actually Peele from Key and Peele, but with the salt and pepper beard and a shaved head. That kind of same proportions. And I think Mr. King here, he's definitely got the Austin hipster thing happening. I don't know if we'll appreciate it.
Yes, well, he seems
that is an Austin.
I do love that bow tie, that's for sure.
Bow tie and suspenders. So it's a I don't know what the pattern's called on the bow tie, but it's like a plaid pattern on suspenders, right? And he's got a very bright orange shirt, dress shirt on, and it looks like he's sitting in front of a window that has a view of, I don't know,
is that
it's a building, maybe downtown Austin.
I know that. I mean, I've seen the building many times. I always think of it as like the thing that Sauron's eye like burns on top of whenever we're in Austin, but I don't know what it actually is. Hey, William in the chat says bow ties are cool. William, I totally agree. And Austin says it's downtown Austin on Congress. Well, Austin, that building has a function or a name, I'm sure. You'll have to let us know, or if you're not sure, we'll be there in like 3 days.
We'll be walking all around that area. He also says he's not a bear, but I don't know. I definitely see some bear, characteristics in this picture. I'm just saying.
Bear comes from the inside.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, but he's also got this really sexy like scruff thing going on. And besides that, this show is all about bears, admirers, and friends. So whether you think you're a bear or not, Austin, you definitely count in our book. You can be a cub. How about that? How about that?
Definitely cub. Yeah, catch me outside. How about that?
I'm all pro otter.
That's right.
He's definitely he's got the makings of an otter.
We enjoy all people who are referred to as animals in the animal kingdom. I wanted to clarify that very specifically.
The storks. I hate the storks. Those guys.
Okay, I don't even know what a stork is. I did learn recently what a dolphin is, however, which I was surprised to learn that's apparently a thing.
Is there a stork? I didn't know there was a stork.
I'm referencing an old line from Happy Endings.
Oh, okay.
We're here to find his group, but anyway.
Well, guys, I'm going to introduce our final movie bear of the week. Unfortunately, his Facebook profile is locked down tighter than my Aunt Virginia's liquor cabinet, but I do have his first name. He goes by Arthur. Guys, take a look at the very handsome Arthur.
Wow. I'm liking
Arthur.
Jim, what are you liking?
I'm liking that it looks like he's just freshly got a haircut, which is pretty awesome. He's got a beautifully trimmed beard and little mustache going. He's wearing some kind of a tank or muscle shirt. And I'm going to guess you can't tell where he's from, right? Because you said his Facebook is locked down.
Yeah.
but it looks to me like he's from the Northeast. I'm just guessing because that cedar shingled house behind him looks like a lot of homes where I grew up back in New England. So I want to make that guess that he's somewhere Northeast in the U.S. We'll see how that works out. If anybody knows him and knows where he lives.
Okay.
Don't give us his address or anything. Just if you know what part of the country he lives in.
Here's my total out of my hat guess. That is a picture from a deck party at Provincetown weekend at P-Town.
Bingo. I think you're right.
You may be right.
I think you're right. And he's a very, very handsome guy. Definitely takes pride in his appearance. Either that or he got totally spiffed up for Bear Week. I'm not sure.
Hey, you know those tea dances, you got to be on fleek with your look for those.
That's right.
All right. Well, Arthur, congratulations, and congratulations to our other movie bears of the week as well. Austin, David, and Arthur. Congrats. If you want to be considered for our movie bears of the week contest every week, I call it a contest. We don't really give anything away besides some lewd comments and maybe a little bit of drool when we're talking about your picture.
It's not a contest, it's a showcase.
It's a show. Oh, I like that. A showcase. Although that makes me think of The Price is Right.
I knew it would.
It's a showcase showdown.
Over under? Like,
oh boy. Well, hey, we've got two big movies to discuss this week, and I see a bunch of people joining. And as hot as our movie bears of the week are, I'm sure they're probably joining to hear about these films. So we are going to start with Logan. And let me just say this up front, for those who may be unfamiliar with how we typically do things here on the Movie Bears podcast, we're going to talk about each movie spoiler-free for a little while, and then we'll give fair warning before we take you guys to Spoiler Pound Town. So with that all said, guys, are you ready to begin our Logan discussion?
Ready as I'm going to be.
Snick. Yes.
There we go. All right. Well, that's an enthusiastic yes from both of you guys. Looks like our chat folks are ready too. So that said, here we go. Our discussion of Logan. All right. So Jim, why don't you give us the setup for this film and some spoiler-free initial thoughts for anyone who might be on the fence and need a little push one way or another.
Sure. And I'm going to ask for a little bit of leniency and forgiveness up front, since I'm not the biggest, superhero comic book movie fan. I know a little bit about Wolverine and the X-Men and Logan from the other X-Men movies, but some of the things I may say may be totally off base. Feel free to correct me, because I always want to learn, but I may not be totally right. So anyway, I'm going to give a synopsis of the movie, which I know is right because I saw the movie. In the near future, a weary Logan cares for an ailing Professor Xavier in a hideout near the Mexican border. But Logan's attempts to hide himself and Professor Xavier from the world and their legacy are upended when a young mutant arrives, being pursued by dark forces. So there you go. You have the synopsis of the movie. Not too spoilery. Anything I said in there is in the trailer. This one's directed by director James Mangold. I don't know. I think he's new to the Marvel universe as a director. So obviously stars Hugh Jackman as Logan, or Wolverine, Patrick Stewart as Xavier, and introduces a young girl named Daphne Keane, who plays a huge part in this movie. If you've seen the trailers, you know that she is in here. And also, I was surprised to see Eric LaSalle in this movie. Some of you may remember. I saw his face and I'm like, I know that dude from somewhere. He's older now, but I know him. If you remember him from the old ER TV show, as one of the doctors there. Always loved him and wondered what the heck he's been up to. I'll have to check IMDb.
I swear to God, I went, oh my God, what's Tyler Perry doing in this movie?
Could be Tyler Perry's like younger brother, I guess, or twin brother. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know who's older, to be honest. Anyway, this is a really well-made movie. I did really like this movie overall. For me, it wasn't like a genre transcendent like masterwork, but a very solid, like top tier comic book movie. It kind of did away with all the things in comic book movies that I don't really care for, and we'll talk more about those later. It does feel like it kind of bends the mold and expands what we would consider a comic book movie or a superhero movie in a lot of ways, and I love that. It kind of brought in like flavors of other genres, and I think that's a really good thing. It was kind of weird watching it because it's like this is an X-Men movie with no people like in costumes. There were no like superhero costumes in the whole movie, which was kind of odd. I don't remember seeing any anyway. I found it awesome that they were trying to shake things up a little bit. But the big thing, apart from other superhero comic book movies, is that it has balls. And it has the balls, and I don't mean balls by like going for an R rating, because I want to talk about that too. It has the balls to carry out its convictions and give like real lasting weight to the stakes that it brings up, right? And separates it from most of the comic book superhero movies. And I mean, I love that about this movie. I'm like, yes, finally a movie that doesn't make me say, oh, well, this happened. This guy got killed, and he's, you'll probably see him back in the next movie. I don't know how that's going to play out here. I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah.
But, and again, a lot was made about this movie's R rating. I think it tries a little too hard for the R rating, and it was very jarring. There was some things. I mean, there's a lot of violence in here, and I think the gory violence is fine. If you're going to have ultra violence in your movie, which a lot of these superhero movies do, because they're always beating the fuck out of each other, or then I prefer those stakes to be realistic, and that means if it means showing the resulting injuries, the beheadings, the dismemberments, show it, right? Because I think what you want to see is, I think a lot of comic book action without any stakes sends a really bad message to people who are watching the movie. Like, you can do all this stuff and nothing's going to happen. This movie is totally the opposite of that, which was cool. There's a scene in this movie of a bit of nudity, which I thought was totally unnecessary. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then there's a lot of language in this movie, which fine. I don't care about the language. It was just very jarring to see characters that up to this point in all the other movies that we've seen, these characters did not talk like this. And now all of a sudden they talk like this. So I don't know. Something's a little odd about that. In the end, I'm giving this, this is a solid recommend for me. Even from, a perpetual non-comic book movie grouch that I am. I give this a recommend. I think people should go out and see this movie. See it in a movie theater. It's beautiful. It's got great action. It's got a nice story, although a little predictable, and we'll get into that. I thought it was good.
Awesome. So we got a big recommend from Jim, and catching up a little bit with the chat. Looks like a couple folks, including William, said they saw Logan. They absolutely loved it. And Austin reminded us that James Mangold directed the last Wolverine movie as well. Definitely great catch there, you guys, for sure. Steve, Jim's given it a pretty hearty recommend. Where do you come down?
Well, I always, my go-to for comic book movies is my brother, who described it as more art house film than superhero movie. And I don't know if that's a totally fair description, but I think it kind of gets you in the mood to what to expect, because yeah, there's a bit of the ultra violence in there. There's some fighting for sure, some great fighting, some great fight choreography, but for sure it's not capes and bright colors, or saving the world from aliens, which I appreciate and I'll talk about more. It is a character-driven movie, particularly about Logan and Xavier, which blessed with two great actors with Hugh Jackman and Patrick, makes for a good movie. It's a movie about two characters basically, and I definitely recommend it if you're a person tired of aliens attacking the world and superheroes saving them bloodlessly. You'll get more than that here. I think you'll actually get a good movie about metahumans.
You mean all that like blue light in the sky?
A little less of that. I mean, there's still some stuff going on here. You'll still get your comic book boner out of it, but I also think it is especially a good movie for people who may not be huge superhero movie fans. So thumbs up for me, for sure.
All right. So we got two big recommends then from Jim and Steve. I guess it's up to me to either make it a hat trick or pull away from the pack. And I got to tell you guys, this might be a little bit disappointing. Just kidding. I'm not going to disappoint you. It's a hat trick. It's a big recommend from me too. I got to say, I know people love the X-Men movies. I used to kind of love the X-Men movies, but these last couple films have just given me a lot of I guess. This latest one with Apocalypse was just, it was so boring for me. So going into Logan, I'm kind of like, ugh, really? Another X-Men movie? And the last two, Logan, Wolverine movies weren't that great to me. Sorry, comic book movie fans who thought they were amazing. So for this film to have impressed me and wowed me as much as it did, I think says a lot. Steve, you mentioned the whole thing about like an indie film, but like with a superhero. I'm not the hugest fan of like totally super hipster indie movies. I like those indie movies that like have an indie feel, but maybe are a little more like moderate mainstream. And I feel like this movie does such a great job of sort of landing squarely like in the middle of the spectrum between indie movie and superhero movie. It also felt a little bit like Nebraska to me, Jim. I don't know if you felt any of that at all. A little bit. Well, I mean, like, road trip journey, everything's sad and depressing, family health issues, I think that this movie, looking at the trailers, you definitely get the sense, Jim, nice, you're wearing your Nebraska prize winner hat. I love that. Oh my gosh. You were so getting later for that, Jim. That was spectacular. But I feel like, from seeing the trailers to this movie, it's not a big surprise that they're going a little less like summer blockbustery with this one, and maybe a little more like character sort of introspective with it. And I really appreciate that a lot. It's nice to have one of these movies where it's like we finally get into this character's head in a way that's not like I'm going to hear like thought monologues the whole time, or I'm going to hear other people tell this character how he feels every 5 sentences to get it across. I feel like, and I don't know if it's the R rating that gives a little bit more freedom, but I feel like Logan kind of gets to be his real self on display here. Yes, with the R rating, the language gets to ratchet up quite a bit. There are F-bombs dropping like crazy, and obviously there's a lot more gore than we're probably used to in a Wolverine flick. I think those things do incredible service to the character, and looking back, I almost wish that we could have had that R rating for the first 2 Wolverine movies. It was Deadpool, right? That was the first to sort of broach that rating for Marvel. And now it's like, we've got Deadpool and we've got Logan, both with an R rating, both films exceptionally good. My question to you guys, because obviously this is a recommend for me, do you think that the R rating is the way for Marvel to start going with more of these films?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think it's definitely the way for Fox Studios to go, and I say that in this sense. Fox was sort of fumbling with their Marvel properties, Fantastic Four, even the X-Men movies. Spider-Man was Sony, right? And meanwhile, Disney/Marvel was kind of leapfrogging all the other movies by being super spectacular, meaning well-made movies, a lot of money thrown into them, state-of-the-art everything, and they just outbigged the other movies. One of the things that I liked in particular about, for instance, the last Wolverine movie, directed by the same guy, is they went away from saving the planet to a standalone small story. And I think that what Fox has done with Logan and with Deadpool before this is they decided to not compete with the Saving the World movies. They made it individual stories that could be a single comic book, and concentrate more on the character development. To that end, I think the R rating serves it because it gives a certain grounding where when you live in a world where people are constantly fighting each other and you got a guy with knives coming out of his hands, there's a small amount of reality to what would that look like when he's sticking it through people's heads.
Mm-hmm.
It would look like you see in an R-rated movie. So I think it serves here, but it'll be good till it's not good and somebody overdoes it and you get tired of it.
I mean, Deadpool was the first R-rated.
I'm gonna hang back 1 second. The joys of doing it live. Hey, Steve, we're getting a lot of echo for some reason.
Okay, I turned down the volume a bit. I'm in an echoey room.
Let's go with it.
That's okay. Go with that. Let's test it out. Testing. I think we're good. All right.
Testing.
All right.
Woo. I think we got it, boys. All right. So, Jim, if you just want to give yourself 5 or 6 seconds of silence for the editing, feel free, and then come back in with the start of your comment. That'd be great.
Just got to remember what I was going to say.
Was it in relation to the R rating and whether that worked?
I got it. So I wonder, I'm sure the success of Deadpool and its R rating had a lot of bearing on the direction they went with this movie. We have a friend that says that Deadpool and Wolverine are kind of closely associated in the comics. And so maybe it made sense, like, hey, Deadpool did great as an R-rated movie, way better than we thought it would. Let's do the same thing with this Wolverine movie. I was fine with the R rating. Like I said, it was a little jarring to make that sudden like step function change in the character's demeanor, like with F-bombs being dropped all the time. The violence, though, didn't bother me. I think that was a long time coming. As you mentioned, Steve, if you got a guy with long, giant knives on his fingers fighting dudes, I mean, you're going to have a lot of carnage, and we did get that in this movie. I want to talk a lot more about that stuff, in spoilers when we get to that. But our rating in itself doesn't bother me. I don't know if it affects the box office, though. I think this movie will be successful. The question is whether it would have been more successful as PG-13 versus an R movie. Bringing in a bit of more audience.
Well, and it's a good question too in regards to like, has Fox sort of found their niche with these superhero movies now, right? Something that's kind of coming up in the chat. William said if it serves the purpose of the character, an R rating would be fine. Austin is saying he doesn't think some of these films necessarily need an R rating. For instance, would you want a Fantastic Four or Captain America movie with an R rating given the characters? Would that feel right to you guys if Captain America was like, fuck this shit, and like throwing his shield around?
Fuck
Okay,
you,
man.
Iron Man.
Nor can I imagine an R-rated Superman movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it works well for some properties. I mean, he's a Wolverine, or Logan is a curmudgeon. I mean, he's a sour. He's got a sour disposition, and he's put up with a lot of bullshit, and he's kind of had it. And we see that in this movie. I want to talk a little bit about how they got to the start of this movie later on when we talk spoilers, because I may need a bit of an education from you guys and from some of our live chat watchers. But I was scratching my head trying to remember, like, okay, how did they get to this point? But yeah, we'll talk about that in spoilers.
So I think now's a good point to do that, and I think everybody, at least that's listening live right now, that's in the chat room, has already seen Logan. So I think we can move on to spoilers without alienating any of them. But if you are listening on digital tape delay, feel free to refer to the handy dandy time index in your show notes that Jim has lovingly crafted for you, and skip ahead as needed. But spoilers for Logan are officially fair game. And Jim, you brought up this notion of, like, how did we get here? Do you mean like what's happened in the past like 20 years, or
right? Because the movie is set in 2029, I think they said, which is basically 10 years in the future. 12 years in the future. So, and Professor Xavier is older. He's more frail. His health is failing. Wolverine also looks much more tired, and seems to be kind of disconnected from whatever's going on. And apparently, the mutants are all gone. At one point, they say they're all gone. And I was trying to remember exactly how that made. Did we end up at the end of one of the previous movies with everybody but Professor Xavier and Wolverine dead? It was kind of weird that they. And also, the beginning of the movie reminded me the most of Better Call Saul. I don't know if you guys got that too. The whole Chuck storyline, like, you got to keep the guy in the. Anyway,
definitely.
So what about that? How did they get there?
Well, I'm another guy to know. I have to ask people, like, what storylines this come from? Is this already in the books? And I suppose there are. I had someone today at work asked me about, how do they portray X-23? And I'm like, who the hell was that? But so that comes up. It took them a while in the movie to get around to saying why there were no more mutants. They did explain why no more were being born. Do you recall that part?
Right, putting whatever it was in the water that.
This is when they put something in the water, so that people ate it and drank it every day, and it just genetically affected people.
So it weeded out the mutants, basically.
Yes.
Okay. But not Wolverine or Professor Xavier.
Well, it was alluded that some incident happened a year ago or something, and Charles was saying that he was responsible for killing some of them. So, I don't remember if that was explained in Days of Future Past. I don't think it was. I think they're sort of just sort of alluding to it, right? We don't have all the details,
right? Okay. All right, that's fine. I was just concerned that I had missed something big. Apparently, it's the case where they just made a big jump in story, and fans of the comics probably would pick up on that. But in the movie narrative, it's just, we put something in the water and they're all gone, basically. Yeah.
I see in the chat room some people are filling us in on stuff we don't know.
Yeah. So. Yeah, so is it William W. Durr? Is that who it is?
Yes,
W. Durr, 1983. Yeah, They alluded to it in the movie that there was an event that caused the deaths of several mutants in New York, which is believed to be Professor Xavier having a psychic attack that killed some of the X-Men. That's interesting.
Well, that makes sense given what we saw, right? Because we saw the professor a couple of times, like start having that seizure and like everybody freezes,
causes an earthquake and
right. And I think they mentioned that it could kill people if that was happening for too long. So maybe the first time he had that psychic attack or something, like, people close to him died.
Right.
Now, without knowing the comic books and looking just exclusively within the context of the movie, what we see on screen, we know that for some reason, and it's stopping him from healing like he used to. We know that Professor Xavier has a degenerative brain disease, basically some version of Alzheimer's, which gives him seizures and is basically kind of losing his mind, which makes him dangerous to the point where his brain has been classified as a weapon of mass destruction by the government.
Right.
So hence they're on the run.
And it's just these two who think that they're the only ones left. And they are until the girl comes along, and her name is, what is her name?
Laura.
Laura, that's right. And, she's a byproduct of some evil experimentation that was happening with children, and there are more of these children, we come to find out at the end of the movie. So basically the whole X-Men franchise is kind of rebooting itself into the junior X-Men, into the realm of junior X-Men.
I believe you're talking about the New Mutants, Jim.
Well, whatever.
the junior X-Men.
The junior Justice League X-Men mutants, whatever.
Now you're blurring properties. You're adorable. I love you. Yeah, so it's definitely setting up, right? Hopefully a new series of movies maybe based around some of these New Mutant characters. I know the movies are sort of going back and forth, like through the timeline, filling in holes, creating new things. So it's kind of neat to have a film that's sort of like at the end of the X-Men timeline, sort of like in Doctor Who. I won't give spoilers, but like by always going to the past and the present and the far distant future, you kind of know where certain things are ultimately going to end up, but the ride to get there is still pretty fun. And I really enjoyed sort of the road trip adventure, which is weird to say, but we had a bit of that in this movie. And, Jim, you brought up Laura. Just to level set, she is like a genetic, artificially created offspring of Logan, right? She's his daughter.
Clone.
Yeah, a clone with his genetic material, put into an embryo and allowed to grow. So she has like the bones, between her fingers, and she has one on her feet, which, I'm sorry, that whole explanation about, oh, well, she's like a lioness, Logan. Lion women use their back claws to defend. That's why she has back claws. I'm like, why don't you just say they thought it would be cooler if she had one in her feet? Like, really? Come on.
Yeah.
But now, speaking of Patrick Stewart, we have X-Men, the next generation. And can we talk a little bit about that ending for a second before the cry-y parts, like the action-y finale? Is that cool?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Have you guys seen Hook?
I have not.
Not in a lot of years.
Ah, okay. Well, maybe someone in listener land will know what I'm talking about. But like at the end of Hook, like all of the kids in Neverland like take up the charge with Peter Pan and decide to like fight back against, the evil villain, Captain Hook. And that's what this scene felt like to me. Like, hey kids, why don't you all help me defeat the bad guys, Logan says. And the kids are like, okay, Mr. Wolverine. And then they're like all running around like using their little powers. Like we have Ice Breath Girl that's all like, and then we have Electricity Boy that's like, pss, pss, pss. Like it made me laugh. It's supposed to be this serious action-y thing. I mean, am I the only one who had that reaction?
No, I think
I'll this though.
Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead. Part of the fun, especially as sort of a casual comic book reader, was trying to figure out whose children each kid was, or whose genetic offspring each kid was. So you can kind of look at it and go, oh, that's a mini Storm, or that's a mini whoever, and so you kind of try to associate the powers with the character. So that's kind of fun, sort of a puzzle putting together kind of a way. The corniest thing to me at the end, which kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit, was the scene at the grave where she took the cross out of the ground and turned it into an X as she went off into the sunset.
I turned to Brad and I'm like, Brad, they made the cross an X. Get it? For X-Men. Get it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm all like, oh, wait, while we have this panning shot, we're going to see his hand pop out of the rocks with his claws shoot up. But they didn't do that.
I at least expected to hear the cartoon X-Men theme song at that point.
Hey, I want to circle back. There's a good conversation going on in the chat here. I want to catch some of it. We talked about the action scene, before we get, once we got to the place called Eden, whatever it was, where all the kids were, you knew how the ending of the movie was going to go. You knew it. The kids were going to help find their powers and save the day. I kind of hated that they kind of stepped through a lot of the kids showing they each got their 10 seconds of showing their superpower before they all did. That was kind of corny. And the part of the problem with, both Austin King and William in the chat says that they sobbed through the last 10 minutes of, when it was the end of Wolverine. It didn't have that effect on me, and I'm not sure why. I think, first of all, I'm not super invested in Wolverine lore and the story. Plus, the connection between he and Laura in the movie, I don't think was. To me, it's not enough just to say, "Oh, she's your clone daughter, and she also has spikes coming out of her hand." For me to get that connection, and they tried to build that, but for me, I guess it just didn't work as much. I didn't feel that. It felt like they were trying to yank the tears out of my face instead of they were coming from within. And I know that's going to be different for different people. But one of the things, the interesting things that Austin said about the end of the movie is that he made a connection to current politics. Like a Canadian man helping immigrant children hunted down by American commandos, right? So that's a good catch. That was Austin doing that. But
there's also a fairly telling scene towards the beginning of the movie where, in his job as a limo driver, picking up people, he's driving along the Mexican wall.
Yeah,
right. And as the guys are shouting at the wall.
I did cringe at the scene, the wheel thieves that had kind of. I was kind of cringing at that scene a little bit. Like, oh, really? Like, the guys who steal, wheels down at the border have to be the Mexicans, I guess, right? Because that was a little weird. I was like, well, that's kind of strange. And I did not like. There was a flash of naked breast in this movie, in the back of the car, and I'm like, what is that for? Like, are they trying to cement the R rating?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the movie at all. It's like she flashes her breast, she laughs, and then she jumps out of the car. Like, that was totally,
boobs.
I'm sorry, man. That was, I don't know. That was just felt really cheap to me. But
well, I gotta say, there's that trifecta of things that'll get you an R rating if you really want one. There's naked boobies, there's the F word, and extreme violence. And without the boobies, I don't know if I can tell anymore. That might have just been a PG-13 movie for a lot of it.
Yeah, and I think they really wanted that rating for this film. It's one of those things where I think when you potentially have children coming to see your movie because it's like PG-13, right? A lot of parents will be like, oh, PG-13, yeah, that's fine. You're kind of locked in to a certain set of things that you're able to do and things that you are not able to do, right? And I'm thinking if it was sort of on the verge without the boobies, they probably just threw the boobs to throw them over the wall to give them that freedom to be as gory and language filled as they want without having to worry about parents in a PG-13 setting kind of bringing their kids. Like when we went to see this, Jim, I saw one kid in the whole theater, and there were quite a few people in the theater. Steve, did you have any kids at your screening?
Yeah, a 11-year-old girl sitting right next to me. I was like, oh, okay, all right. But I mean, with parents. But yeah, there were a fair amount of. This is a suburban movie theater. There was well, definitely teenagers and a few younger teenagers.
All right.
Not many in ours, though.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound like anyone's bringing little kids, at least from our experiences so far. And typically Facebook erupts when something like that happens, and I haven't seen it. So you know what, guys? It must be true because I didn't internet read it. So, but I'm kind of glad that they got that rating so that they could play around with it. William in the chat is mentioning that this movie might somehow exist outside of the main X-Men continuity storyline. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't done that much research, but if that is the case, I guess this is one possible future for Logan. And Sam from Denver had mentioned in the chat earlier that this movie is sort of predicated right on a comic story called Old Man Logan that came out a while back. So it's sort of loosely following that a little bit. Guys, as we look to wrap and move to our next movie, I just want to ask, if this were Hugh Jackman's last film, which for all intents and purposes, that seems to be the message that's being communicated. I don't know if that will stay that way, but would you be comfortable if this was his last stint out as Wolverine?
Oh, sure. I'd be pleased if they were able to stick with that. I don't believe that'll happen. I think you'll see him appear in a movie. I don't know if he may not be the main thrust of another movie coming up, but I guarantee you'll see him. Well, I guess I can't guarantee. I'm strongly thinking that you'll see him in another X-Men or Wolverine movie down the road.
How about you, Steve?
What do they say in comic books? There are only two characters that ever really die for good: Peter Parker's Uncle Ben and Bruce Wayne's parents. They're the only ones dead.
The mortals.
And at some point, someone will back up a truckload of money to Hugh Jackman's home, and it'll show up in a flashback or a future flash or something like that. Narrating in the background. But if he wants to go out, you think he had a good send off.
All right.
We'll see.
I think it was a great send off. I like I said, I totally respect the movie, even if the ending got a little predictable and corny when they had to wrap things up. I did appreciate that they, like I said earlier, that they kind of stuck to their stakes and didn't have some weird like post-credit scene of like the rocks moving on his grave or something silly like that. So, good on them for that.
They wrapped it up, but they also did their nice setup for future movies with new actors that they want.
Yep.
I think interestingly enough, had there not been the last third of the movie, had there not been the big final battle and all that, it would have still been a very cool, neat little movie. Had it just been the road trip movie with Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, I think doing really well. I'll tell you when I got emotional during this movie. I think it was there was a scene with Patrick Stewart. They're the guests of this farmer of this family.
Yeah. Oh yes.
And Professor Xavier is just saying, "This was the best, most closest thing to a perfect day I've had in a long time."
Right.
That's the one that gave me the sniffles a little bit. I thought
that was a really cool moment.
There were actually were some very good moving performances by some very good actors who have made their money in sci-fi and comics, but you see that thespian training in there.
I thought that whole farmhouse scene, fortunately it came to a bad ending for them, but it went down like a horror movie. I mean, that was terrifying.
For sure.
That scene for me was terrifying. I mean, I was shocked that they went as far as they did in terms of killing the kid as brutally as they did, right? I mean, right on camera, because it was what's the guy's name? The X whatever, the bad guy.
X-24, I think.
X-24, like totally like ripped the kid apart, like right on screen. I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. It even like threw me back in my seat. Like I was surprised he did that. But that whole scene played out like a horror movie. I was terrified in that scene. So that was a real, and then the emotional scene before that, the dinner scene, where it's like, hey, this is what a family really is like. And this is what, this is what I'd like, one of the best days ever. And you're right. It was very emotional. And it went from that to emotionally terrifying in in the space of like 5 minutes, which was awesome.
I gotta say, I mean, Patrick Stewart was so great in that scene. Austin in the chat is saying his performance there was almost as good as his performance in my favorite episode of Star Trek ever, The Inner Light. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it was pretty good. But Austin, because I know you must be a Trek person, I wanted to show you.
Kissing your ass big time.
I wanted to show you this amazing gift that my wonderful, wonderful fiance got me a few Christmases ago. It is a prop replica of the Resican flute from that episode, made by Morgan Gandel, the writer of that episode, who we met at a convention a few years back, and we were able to get it even autographed. So it does make noise, but it's a prop, so you really wouldn't want to play it. But hey, if you want one, maybe Jim will get you one too, Austin. I don't know.
Are you sure it's not the talking flute from HR Puff and stuff? That's what it looks like to me.
I'm positive.
Oh, yes. Puffin stuff.
In any event, that farmhouse scene was crazy. That was so hard because we get this really great moving performance from Patrick Stewart, and then 2 seconds later, X-24 is killing him. And it's like, I kind of didn't expect him to, I don't know, to die. I thought there was going to be some way that, he kept around and he ended up going with the New Mutants and helping them to like start their deal. But nope. He died too. We got a comment from our friend Steven here in Tucson who's listening. He says he wishes they had gotten Magneto in there at the end when Charles died, because they've been through so much together. He figures Magneto would have had to know he was dying somehow. What do you think, guys? Would that have been too much if Magneto just suddenly popped up and was like, "Yeah, you killed Charles"?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why, this movie seems to indicate that all of the old mutants are now gone. And the only thing left is the children, led by Laura, and whatever next generation mutant creations that this organization comes up with, cisgen or whatever the heck they are. Yeah.
Well, here's what I would speculate is, had Magneto been around, essentially this is the future he always predicted, why he always revolted against, non-mutants. He predicted, they want to take us out. So if he had been around, he would probably have been leading the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been attacking these guys to return. They would have had to take him out early. So, he might have been one of the first to go in the battles with the collection. I am speculating out of my ear here.
I mean, but plus he's also like super, super high profile, right? So, I mean, that makes sense to me. Guys, I just realized we've been talking for an hour about all those hot listeners and Logan, and we still have a whole nother movie to discuss. It was like, hey, we're getting close to wrapping up here. And then I'm like, oh my God, no, we have another great film, ? To talk about. So guys, how do we feel about putting Logan to his final rest? Probably not.
Yeah.
Plus, I'll say one more thing about Logan for anyone, if anyone's listening who hasn't seen it yet. Important to know, there is no post-credit stinger at the end.
Good tip, because we waited and we didn't see anything.
But there is a bonus scene at the beginning before the titles.
Right.
That was awesome. Yeah. I don't know that I want to rob the fun of that from anybody who maybe doesn't care about the Wolverine movies, but it's hanging out. So we'll leave that special thing at the beginning to the mysteries of us not telling you. And we're going to go ahead and switch gears and switch over to our discussion of Get Out. Every time I read the title of that movie in my head, I hear "Get out, get out." So Get Out. I will go ahead and introduce this one since Will isn't here for our co-introduction duties this week. This is a new film written and directed by Jordan Peele, whose name came up earlier, and it is getting a lot of buzz right now. It had 100% like Rotten Tomato score for the longest time until a couple negative reviews snuck in there and knocked it down a little bit. But IMDb has the following synopsis. It is rather long-winded, and by that I mean one sentence. But basically, the premise is a young African-American man visits his Caucasian girlfriend's mysterious family estate. So there you have the setup. If you've seen the trailer, you obviously know things probably go a little wrong. And I want to say just real quick, this movie to me, without going into spoilers, is sort of like half horror movie, half like quarter dark comedy and like quarter social message. And I think it does a really good job at being all of those things at the same time. Typically what we see, I think, with a film like this at times is it's like it tries to do different things and sucks at all of them, or it like picks one and kind of skates by with the rest and ends up sucking anyway. But I think for the first time in a long time, this juggles all of these things supremely well. I got to give major kudos for an inventive approach. I have long been freaked out by the idea of hypnosis. So that being an element of Get Out was interesting to me. I can never hear like a spoon against a teacup the same way again. It's in the trailer, so that's not a spoiler. But yeah, this was a really good movie. I think it's interesting in sort of the situation it sets up. There are some ways that you think you know where it's going, and then out of left field, it takes an unexpected but like really satisfying turn. So this is a big recommend for me. Steve, how about you?
I liked it. You know, I was very encouraged by the, at the time, 100% review from Rotten Tomatoes. I had read some of the backlash to some things about it we could talk about. Strong recommendations from, my brother, for instance, is like, oh my, he literally called me walking out of the theater saying, you must go see this movie now. I liked it. I don't know if I was as hair blown back by it as a lot of people. I think a lot depends on how big of a fan you are of Key and Peele and their point of view. But it definitely makes me want to see more movies that he does. So I would also maybe comment that it's more thriller than horror movie. Works with a lot of tension. It's a recommend. It's a thumbs up, but not a oh my god.
All right. So we've got a big hearty recommend from me. We've got a half hearty recommend from Steve. Jim, what about you? Where do you come down?
Yeah, I'm a recommend too. I like this movie because I think it tried to do something a little bit different we haven't really seen much of. I mean, we've certainly seen thrillers where things aren't exactly what they seem. Again, I'm with you, Steve. I would call this more of a thriller, like a psychological thriller, than a horror movie. Although in parts it got into the horror more traditional horror. I heard somebody call this a social monster movie, and it's which I think is an apt description, right? Because whole message is about some of the more subtle kinds of racism that are out there and how they can be just as bad as overt levels of racism that we see as hate and those kind of things. this movie, and maybe this is more spoilers. I don't want to get it. We'll get into how this movie manifests its message. Kind of in the middle and toward the end of the movie. I thought all the performances was really good. I thought this was a really good step for Jordan Peele, whose last writing credit was Keanu, which to me was weak to mediocre. I mean, that was a straight up comedy with some racial stuff in it, but this was totally different from that. And I loved the direction he's going in. And he has said he's going to write that deal with these social bugaboos. And it's going to be interesting to see how he sets these, maybe in different genres. I don't think they're all necessarily all going to be like psychological thrillers or horror movies. I think they might touch on a bunch of different genres. So, I mean, these are some cool ideas of mashing up a thriller / horror movie with, a social message movie. And I thought it worked very well here. Sometimes it was a little heavy-handed, and sometimes it maybe didn't go far enough. But yeah, this is to recommend for me.
And it had Bradley Whitford goodness, so that even ups the game some more.
Yeah, I thought all the performances here were really good. The parents and the family. There were some creepy characters in this movie. I thought the leads were really good. Daniel Kaluuya, is that his name? I thought he was really good. The leading guy here. It's just good all around. Brad, I mean, we may want to get into spoilers pretty quick on this one.
I think we do. The last thing I just wanted to say real quick is this movie was made on $4.5 million in its production budget, and globally it has made $78 million at this point. So 5 million, 80 million. I think that speaks a lot to how great this film is, how much word of mouth that it's getting, considering it's playing number 2 to a really excellent superhero movie right now. A movie that was made for 5 million. That's kind of crazy. So glad to see that's happening. I think 2017 is off to a strong start in that regard.
And I think what excites me most about this film is that I like Peele's brain and Key's brain and the things their take on a number of things, and simply that's just going to mean he's going to get to offers to make more movies. So I think this is tip of the iceberg for him. We'll be interested to see what he does, especially with larger budgets. But that's the great appeal of a horror movie for a studio. Is it kind of traditional that many of them are low budget and then high yield? Be it Blair Witch Project or something else, you can get away with them pretty cheap, but people will see them. And I look forward to what he does next.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how he peels back the layers of some other social bugaboos.
Oh boy.
Wow. Anyway, I think that's our terrible pun segue that we'll use as a launching off point into spoilers as we peel back the layers on Get Out. So if you have not seen the movie and you value your virginal innocence, because, why not? This is the kind of film I personally would not want to be spoiled into. I think it's so great. If you haven't seen it yet, just close out of the podcast. We give you permission, if you're listening live, go see it. Come back to YouTube or iTunes for the spoiler section here. But spoilers are officially fair game. And Austin, I see your comments about my puns, but you know what? It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
So where do you guys want to start with spoilers for Get Out?
I just want to. I started down this road and I couldn't finish because I thought it was too big a spoiler. But when people hear a movie about that touches on racism and kind of pulls a blanket off that and brings that into like the realm of like a horror movie, they think that this is going to be a white versus black or white versus any minority or whatever because of hate. This was what really got me was how they represented the racism in this movie as not because these people hated blacks in this case. It was because they admired them so much for their traits and their characteristics that they associate with that race. It's kind of a weird thing. It was like, and this is a form of racism, right? Even if they see it as like a form of like, I don't know, twisted flattery, I guess, or whatever. But in the movie there, of course, they're subjecting these people to like partial brain transplants and, making them servants in some cases, turning them into like stand-ins for dead relatives that they've had. I mean, it's a very crazy, like kind of out there premise that Peele brought to the screen. And I love the movie for that, because I thought in the third act, the movie there was like eye roll moments when they got into where the guy's doing the operations, all right, and he's got this like surgical suite in his cellar, and he's like stanchion with candles like going all over him, and I'm like, okay, guys, what's going on here? So my eyes rolled a little bit near the end of this movie.
I always get a little bit cautious about films. Yeah, I'm pretty about films about race where if it goes a little too much into cliche, all the black characters are saints, all the white characters are evil, that sort of thing. And this film uses that, acknowledges it, and then kind of tries to turn it on its head a bit, which I think is very key in Peele.
Right.
It's more of a thriller than horror movie, and so the movie works on tension. And the tension in this movie is the fear that black people have.
Hey, Steve.
The fear black people have of black people.
Hey, Steve, we're going to pause for just a second. For some reason, your audio is super garbled. It's very static and crackly.
All of a sudden. It's almost like a processing. That's the microphone. It's not the microphone. It's something going on with, maybe there's an app running or something.
Everything else down.
Try doing this, Steve. At the top of the Google Hangouts controls, do you see the adjust bandwidth usage? Looks like cell phone bars.
Adjust cell phone usage.
No,
adjust bandwidth usage.
There should be like 5 icons at the top of the Google screen. One in the middle.
Okay, try moving that down.
One notch.
All right, that's 2 notches down.
Go 1 notch down.
1 notch down.
It's still doing it. Let's do this. Steve, do you want to try exiting the session, and I'll give you the link to come back in?
Let's sure. And I may unplug and replug my camera while I'm at it.
Okay, no problem. We'll get you back in a second. Just use that same link. You're already gone. Okay, I'll message it to you. The joys of doing it live. That's right. William in the chat is saying, love technology. We're getting a peek behind the curtain right now. Hang in there, Jim says in the chat. Stay with us. We'll have Steve back shortly. So this will be a bonus part of the show. Maybe it'll end up as a stinger. I don't know. In the chat room, what do you guys want to hear about while we wait for Steve to come back? You can ask us to talk about anything that is semi-appropriate.
This is an AMA. This is an AMA for Brad and Jim.
Steve, welcome back. All right, Steve, you're muted.
I'm unmuted. Is it?
You sound a lot better.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Perfect. All
That was
right.
weird.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but we got you back. That's what counts. So here's what we'll do. Steve, we're going to give about 10 seconds of silence. And then if you just want to kind of rewind it back to what you were talking about, if you remember.
That's my main philosophical point.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So give us 10 seconds of silence and then go.
One thing I often feel about movies, particularly the ones that deal with race, is a hate heavy-handedness or obvious cliches. All black characters are saints, or the white characters are evil. But Peele uses that cliche in an interesting way, essentially to try to turn it on its head at the end. Being a thriller and not a horror movie, it's a movie based on tension, and essentially the tension in this movie is, if you will, the fear that black people have of the fear that white people have of black people. So, he walks into this home very afraid of what they'll think of him as the black boyfriend. And, we're sort of steered that direction of thinking that these are overt racists who would want to do him harm. But it turns out that, they're in fact, almost far left liberals who like black folks just a little too much, and but at the same time see them as, not really people, more as playthings, and that's where the tension and the flip comes from.
Very well put, Steve. Austin King had in the chat had a good summation of, I think, the same points. He says in his interpretation, it's the admiration was more of, and hang on here on these words, guys. The admiration was more fetishization and commodification of black culture, more indicative of well-meaning white people who want to believe they are not racist, but actually are. And that's exactly, I think, what the point the movie was trying to make, in the way it portrayed its particular brand of racism.
Indeed.
Now, another issue with race I think this movie brings up, and this is very key in Peele, is for instance, the TSA agent, the buddy, who was hilarious, I thought. My brother described him as every guy who sits next to you at a Magic Johnson theater during a horror movie.
Wow.
And to a certain degree, even the social commentary aside, I thought a lot of this movie was about everyone who says, man, if I was in that house, I would have ran. Why didn't you get the hell out? And really, that's what, to me, the entire title was about. Get out! As everyone seeing the movie theater who sees the people walk into the dark house instead of running away, and everybody's in the theater, get out of the house!
I told you to get out of the house! You shouldn't have gone in there.
So to me, in many ways, the TSA agent was the voice of the audience going, why are you going there? You know something bad's going to happen. Run the hell away.
Yeah. He's blinded by the girlfriend.
Well,
As happens sometimes, I guess. But oh goodness. Well, I'm really glad to see that films like this are being made, and more importantly, being celebrated. It's so nice to see folks who, I'll be honest, I wouldn't normally think they'd go see a film like this, but because it's getting so much positive, like water cooler talk at work and on Facebook, people are going out and giving this film money. And if that keeps Jordan Peele continuing to make these films, I'll keep seeing them as long as they continue to hold my interest, for sure.
If I may say one last thing about the social commentary of this movie, and there was a little bit of controversy around it from I think a minority of people who accused it of being racist against white people, which I took as usual internet trolling. But interesting. But in discussion I had with my brother about this, you know, we you know, not that either of us could speak to that point necessarily, but you know, I would say to some people, if you are sensitive to that sort of thing, this is a movie where I don't think there were any positive white characters. when I kind of sat and thought about it for a minute. So yeah, maybe it's fair criticism. Who knows?
But I don't know that I walked away with it with that vibe. Yeah, I don't think I got that.
I suppose it's one way of looking at it. I'd like to hear what people would say in rebuttal to that. Like, you know, okay, I'll give you the point, but you know, and here's the rebuttal to that. I don't know. I didn't see it that way, but I suppose now looking back on it, maybe there's a point to be discussed there. I don't know what it is, but
I also took it as, like I said, the people who might be sensitive to that are probably the same people who are saying the new Ghostbusters movie was anti-men.
Yeah, I don't get that either. That sounds like internet trolling to me, but I don't know. Maybe it came from Reddit. Who knows? The wild, dark world of Reddit. But hey, guys, real quick before we move into plugs, I just want to make sure that you guys are all you. So
nice. Get out! Get out! Get out of the comments.
Oh, goodness. There you go. All right. Well, guys, we are going to go ahead and move towards wrapping things up. I feel like we could talk for another hour on both Logan and Get Out, but we don't have that much time. And Steve, the Sacramento Movie Bears were so sweet to let us borrow you for a little while. We don't want to abuse that privilege. So do me a favor, kick plugs off with us, and A, tell us where people can interact with the Sac Movie Bears, and B, if you have a film or anything you want to plug this week, feel free.
Absolutely. Well, pretty simple, especially if you're already on Facebook watching this podcast. Go search Sacramento Movie Bears. And essentially, we're a movie every Tuesday here in the Sacramento area. Ironically, there's not going to be one tomorrow, but our next movie will be Kong a week from tomorrow. Yes. And I think we're gonna be reserved seats in the new theaters, the big comfy recliners, and all that kind of good stuff. Very casual. Get a hold of us on Facebook or just show up for a movie.
Awesome. Yeah, anybody there and close by to Sacramento, hook up with those guys for a nice time at the movies.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Excellent. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Jim, what have you got this week?
I've got two quick movie plugs. These are the two movies I was able to see when I was traveling last week. Elle, the Paul Verhoeven movie that got a little bit of discussion during the Oscars because Isabelle Huppert was nominated for Best Actress. And very well deserved now that I've seen the movie. This was one that I was just late getting to. French movie, some really shocking things in it. A great performance by Isabelle Huppert. Also, a new movie by Macon Blair starring Elijah Wood and somebody we love, Melanie Linsky.
Yes.
I don't feel at home in this world anymore. This is one of those kind of crazy things where a small thing at the beginning of the movie spirals like totally out of control down the drain, and horrible bad things happen all through this movie. This is kind of a fun movie. Not great, but still a good movie. Definitely kind of in the vein of Green Room and Blue Ruin. Even kind of looked a lot like Green Room. It had the same. I don't know if it has the same cinematographer, but definitely the same cinematography style. It's a long title. I don't feel at home in this world anymore. Check it out.
All right. Excellent. Love me some Melanie Linsky for sure. So for me this week, I want to plug, in anticipation of the release of Disney's live action Beauty and the Beast, the 25th anniversary version of the animated film, which, oh my God, I cannot believe it's that old. And how old that makes me. But we bought this on iTunes and we watched it last night. And holy crap, I mean, it has been absolutely remastered. It looks beautiful. It looks like an animated film like from today, and they really cleaned up the sound, and so much better than my old VHS copy was. But it was just so awesome to go back through. I mean, I've heard a lot of these songs like come up on different playlists I have over the years, but it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, and watching it again, so crystal clear in audio and sound. It was mesmerizing. Like when that music starts at the beginning of the movie and we zoom in on the castle, I just got chills, and it was awesome. So Jim, thank you for watching that with me. I know we're going to watch the original movie at some point this week. This was not a Disney version, of course. No. Right, Jim? But
right. Yeah. It's the 1946 French version or whatever of Beauty and the Beast. Real gothic feel to that movie, black and white. It's going to be good. No music, no songs, no, Gaston and his gay lackey.
By the way, to interrupt, what are you thinking of that controversy with the new Beauty and the Beast movie?
So, Jim, have you read about that? I know you kind of protect yourself from.
No, I read a little bit about that. You know what? I don't know. It depends. I want to see how it plays in the movie. They could, if they do it wrong, it could come off totally stupid. I just hope it's well handled. We'll have to see. But as far as the controversy of like theater chains or theaters like pulling the movie because they hear there's gay characters in it, I'm like, to me, the more press we give to that stuff, the worse we make it. I just say let it happen. Let them not play the movie. Whatever. You're not going to change them. Let's just see how it plays out in the movie.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, what Steve is talking about, turn away if you don't want to be spoiled. I'll give you a 5 count. Okay, I'm skipping ahead. Is the fact that the LeFou character is going to be officially gay in the movie. And apparently there are overt references to help us know that. I always felt like the character was gay in the animated movie. So, for me, it's like, it's more modern time. I mean, why not put a name on it? You know what I mean? It makes sense to me. I don't necessarily feel like it's like a deliberate grab to be like, ooh, look how wonderfully progressive we are. I think it's just the dude's a homo that's into Gaston, and like watching him sing about his chest hair, like, come on, obviously he's a bear chub.
It's already gay enough. Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
I always thought it would be the French candlestick in the clock. I thought they had a thing.
Yeah, I always thought Lumiere's like interests in the feather duster were just a little too like trying too hard to keep Cogsworth from knowing I was feeling. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it has been a pure joy hanging out with all of you who were in the live chat with us tonight. Thanks so much, Emilio and Austin and William and Sam and everybody else who was hanging out in the chat. Jim, you're laughing about
We're having a discussion about a Beauty and the Beast bestiality.
Oh God, I just saw that.
William's saying, hey, we're talking about a gay scene when there's already a bunch of bestiality in the movie. And I'm like, really? Did that happen in the movie? The one I saw, I don't think so.
Oh God. And Austin says he officially wants his Cogsworth Lumiere relationship to be a canon thing. Austin, you never know. Maybe we'll get 3 gay characters instead of 1. Who knows? Yeah. But hey, Steve from Sac Movie Bears, we just want to say thank you for guesting on the show tonight. I know scheduling doesn't always work well, but we appreciate you rushing home and getting on the show with us. It's been a blast hanging out as usual.
I've loved it, and I'm now encouraged to invest in some audio equipment for the next time. But thanks for having me. So much appreciated.
Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks again to everyone who's tuning into the show, either live, as you are right now, or through iTunes or Stitcher Radio on digital tape delay. Glad to have you guys. Parting thoughts, Jim, where can our listeners interact with you online?
Well, you can find me at JJP Out West on Twitter. That's where to look for me. Tweet me. Tweet at me.
Tweet at you. Excellent. And
I don't mean
Steve,
on Facebook.
how can people find you if they want to say hi?
Oh gosh, Sacramento Movie Bears on Facebook, and Steve Bubba on Facebook also personally. I do want to give one shout out though, since we're talking comic book related, and since I don't get to come to the LKT or to Movie Bears TV, is if you like reinterpretations of well-known comic books, oh my God, you must be watching Riverdale on the CW. I highly recommend Riverdale. See the Archie comics in a whole new light.
Awesome. I've been interested in checking that out. So I'm glad to hear a good opinion from someone whose opinion I trust. So definitely have to check that out. And Steve, if you ever want to come on MBP TV, you just let me know, my friend. You're welcome anytime.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. All right. Guys, you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. Feel free to shoot me a direct message, and we'll be happy to chat about movies. We're running a little long in the tooth. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see y'all later. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.